Welcome to the Moments That Matter podcast. My name is Laura Escamilla. I am your host. And today I have a new friend, Paige Cisneros. Paige is the owner of Cisneros College Consulting. She's an independent education consultant, one of two in South Texas. And as an education consultant, her role is to help students and families find colleges that are a right fit for them and help guide them through the college application process. And she's also a mom of two college students. What we're going to discuss today are college essays. This last episode we had ideas on resumes and college list building so that we can start the application process that opens tomorrow, August 1st. And we're going to talk about college essays because I feel like college essays are the bane of a student's existence.
True.
So I have never met a student who looks forward to writing an essay. And for the scholarship that I administer, I go do presentations. And when I get to the part that's a one-page personal statement is required, you can feel the mood change in the room. Is that your experience?
They've never done anything like it before.
Right.
It's nothing similar to what they've written in school in any way.
Yeah. So they just like whoosh. And despite the fact that we provide an outline on our website and we provide guidance of what exactly needs to be on the essay, it's just during the headlights.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
This is where your expertise comes in. I know you do more than just college essays, but I feel like this is really where students struggle the most. What has your experience been with college essays and what the first thing is you tell your students that you work with?
So the first thing I remind my students is that the essay is one of all the different parts that are going to be looked at by the school. So it's one part, but it is equal to all the other parts. It includes the transcript and it includes the grades they've made in their SAT and their resume and everything else. So it's equally important. They need to give it that focus.
Right.
And I also tell them to think of it as an interview on paper. It's a way for the school to know who they are as a person beyond the numbers. It's a way to introduce themselves so the school can really understand where they come from and what's important to them.
Right. So I kind of feel like it's a missed opportunity for students not to really consider working on it because this is their opportunity, right, to stand out from all the applicants because schools are getting thousands of applications. And for the most part, numbers look the same. 4.0s look the same, AP classes and all that kind of stuff. So this is their chance to show who they are and their character.
And that can be the intimidating part too,
Right.
is really to put themselves out there like that.
What is preparing for writing an essay? What is step one? Typically in school, it's very much you're going to brainstorm, you're going to have an outline, and then, of course, edit and what have you. But is that the same thing?
So the first thing we always talk about is the brainstorming because you want to make sure you have the right topic from the beginning. You don't want to waste your time talking and writing about a topic that is not going to be the best reflection of what they want to have come across to the school. I always have my students start with brainstorming and I'll work with them on that one-on-one because that's what I do. But there's lots of online resources that students can find. Just Google brainstorming personal statement essay and you'll find all sorts of brainstorming like notes and suggestions and worksheets and all that kind of thing. And just go through all the brainstorming exercises, even though they may seem tedious, they may seem a little silly or contrite. The key is going to be finding something that shows your individuality, shows what your difference is, even in something that you think is just everyday,
Right.
right? You're going to highlight what makes you special in spite of the fact that you think you're not.
Right. What is your suggestion as far as researching the school? I imagine you would want them to gear it towards how they fit the school community.
Not necessarily in the personal statement essay.
Okay.
If that's what we're talking about, the personal statement essay right now. So you're really focusing on what values you hold and what makes you who you are, what you hold important, what kind of student you would be on a college campus.
Right.
And then if you know what you want to major in, you can roll it into how that would look as you pursue your major and your career on a campus.
Right.
You don't really target a particular school until you get to the supplemental essays.
Okay. And is that the case even with the Common App prompts and that?
Yes,
that
absolutely.
is the same case?
Absolutely.
There's a personal statement and then there is
Supplemental essays. Yes.
the other stuff.
Yes.
So when they're doing a personal statement, do you recommend going back to when I grew up all the way back or just keep it to what their high school experiences were or?
So interestingly, now that UT and A&M are on the Common Application and there's very few schools, there are still some that only do the Apply Texas. But the vast majority of the students that I work with, that most students will do, it's on the Common App. And for the Common App, it can go as far back as you want it to.
Mhm.
For the Apply Texas, they specifically want you to address an experience from high school. So before, when I had to do UT and A&M on the Apply Texas, I made sure to bring something up from high school.
Got it.
But now that's no longer the case. It's really whatever is the thing that drives you most.
Right. So what the advice would you give to a student who doesn't know their major and really
That
their
that's
field?
that's okay. You don't have to know your major. You just want to be able to convey what's important to you. And even if I don't know, I might be this, I might be that, but I know that this is who I will be in whatever I do.
Right.
And you're conveying your values and what's important.
That I know that I work hard and I'm
Exactly,
successful and
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And I would say, as you're brainstorming your topic, keep in mind that there's two components when you want to think about writing your essay. You want to convey who you are to the school through your values and morals and what you'll be on the campus. And you do that through a story.
Mhm.
So you want to think of a topic where you can tell a very interesting story about your life. And when I say a story, I mean like a detailed, like, I remember I woke up the day that I did blah, 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 blah. And it's like you're talking to a friend and you're
Right.
telling him, this is the thing that happened to me.
Right.
So you want to tell a very conversational story that's purpose is to convey who you are, what's important to you, how you grew those values.
I sat in on a webinar for college essays
Mhm.
over the weekend. And one of the questions that was brought up by somebody in the webinar was, what if I'm just an average student and I've not had any obstacles and I'm just like everybody else?
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
I assume every child must feel that they are
Absolutely.
just like everybody else. But I mean,
Yes. Yes.
everybody's life is different. No two people are the same.
Exactly. And that's one of the biggest drivers of the brainstorming, is to help students think more deeply about, what is my favorite this? What made me do this? What was my biggest experience? It doesn't have to be a challenge. What's the
Hmm.
biggest experience in my life? Who's a person that has made the most impact on my life, and why? I've had students write essays on movies. They were a big cinemaphile, and so
Hmm.
they picked movies that were important to them and highlighted the values that we had decided he was going to focus on. And he wrote an amazing essay about movies. It was fantastic. I've had students writing about hunting with their family. I've had students writing about music and how it reflects different parts of her very interesting family.
Hmm.
So it can be about anything. You need to focus in on what is important to you and make that interesting through the story that you tell.
Even if it's video games.
Even if it's video games, video games is probably not the best thing to
Yeah.
choose.
But
If
if they're gamers and
if they are
maybe,
very much into gaming, then that's what you write
yeah.
about you. But you need to say, how does that make you who you are and creates values
Hmm.
in you that the school would want to have on their campus?
Right.
That's the key. Yeah.
Right. As we go through the personal statement, obviously, like I said, Common App will open
Mhm.
August 1st, and there are prompts for that. I wanted to go into what that looks like for these prompts.
The different prompts you can pick from. I
Right.
have to say, those individual prompts are really an afterthought for me. I
Hmm.
really don't focus on those because I want to write an essay for the student and what's important to them.
Hmm.
And then we go in and we look, okay, now we see what you wrote, which one of these prompts fits best with what you wrote?
Already wrote.
That way, it gives the student the freedom to just write what's important to them, focus on the values, convey their story,
Hmm.
and there will always be a prompt they'll fit. I think the last one is so broad that anything could go.
The last prompt being share an essay or topic of your choice.
Exactly. So really, the topics that they give you or the prompts are just really an afterthought.
So we should focus on the personal statement.
Yes.
And how long does it take your students to compile a personal statement? Somebody is today saying, I haven't written a thing. How long should they expect for
Okay.
this process to take?
Generally, when I work with students for the year and a half to 2 years that I
Hmm.
normally do,
Hmm.
we'll brainstorm, and then we go back and try to expand the information, find more details, find the best opening sentence and opening paragraph, and do another draft. And we usually will do 6 or 7 drafts easily. I have done one in 3 drafts in 3 days, but that was kind of a very exceptional circumstance that
Right.
I don't normally do.
And do you include the parents in this process at
No,
all?
no, no,
Okay, so this
no.
is very much student-centered, even if it's reviewing it or giving
Um,
their input.
for students that are doing it on their own, I would say do your first draft on your own after your brainstorming and
Mhm.
take it to maybe your English teacher.
Okay.
And then maybe after you've done a few go rounds with your English teacher and you
Mhm.
like where you're going with it, then maybe get some parent feedback. What you don't want to do is show it to 10 different people and you're getting 10 different people's opinions and
Right.
then you don't know which way to go. Too many cooks in the kitchen kind
Right.
of thing. Have two reliable sources to give you feedback and leave it there.
And you kind of alluded to it already, but it should be not so much an academic essay
Mm-mm,
format. It should be very personal, the way you
mhm.
speak to
Exactly.
somebody.
Now, if
And
you are an academic kind of person, and that's just really how you roll and that's how
mhm,
you live your life, and I've had students like that,
mhm,
then the essay is going to sound more like that because that's who they are,
right.
right? So it needs to be reflective of how this person interacts and speaks in their life.
Right. So the students I have worked with 2 years ago, I worked with a young lady who wrote the essay very much, I'm telling a story, I'm doing this. And then she came and said, my mom looked at it and she said, it sounds too much like a kid. I need to sound more professional and I need
Oh,
to
yeah.
sound this. But I did, I guess, try to impress on her that it should be her own voice. It
Mhm.
should sound like her. It shouldn't sound like her mother wrote
Exactly. The
the essay.
schools will pick up on that, right?
Right.
There have been times when I can tell that a parent kind of interceded in the
Mm-hmm.
process, and I have to say something because I know it's not to the student's benefit,
Right.
that it needs to sound like that student.
Right.
Because I mean, they've read so many essays.
Right.
They know what
And
they're reading.
I read that they have about 5 minutes to kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
go
Yeah.
through with
Yeah.
the number of applicants.
Mhm.
So it needs to immediately grab you
Which is why
and
that first sentence is so important when you
right.
write your essay. You wanna that's a technique that I like to work with the students on. Once we've done the first draft and they kinda get all their ideas out
Mhm.
the first go round, we'll go through and we'll broaden out detail to get more interesting facts in. But we'll also go through and pick out, is the way I started the essay really the most interesting way to start the essay?
Mhm.
And it could be there's a sentence from the 3rd paragraph down that you wanna bring up and have it what we call jumping into the middle,
Mhm.
which is like you just bring the reader directly into the story. Like, this is what's going on
Which happens in
right now.
movies, right? And then you flash back
Exactly,
to right.
exactly,
Or like
yes,
so
yes, and that really grabs that reader's attention, and maybe they'll
right.
read your essay a little
So
bit
you
more.
should
Yeah,
kind of think of it like that, like a story, a
that's a
movie
good way to
story,
say it,
right?
yeah, I never
So
thought about it like that,
yeah,
but yeah,
so
yeah, absolutely,
you're
yeah,
going, this is what's happening now, and then you flash back, and
yeah.
then so you're
Yeah,
telling a story
that's it, and that's
of where
kinda
it
how
came
we do
from.
it, and I
Yeah,
sometimes we will do flashing back and forth and that kinda thing.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, that's interesting. I have a question regarding COVID. This graduating class, everybody was freshman year,
Mhm,
probably during COVID. How much of an impact is that? Do you recommend that story? Because that's an obstacle.
mhm.
Every student
Everybody did. So you're
experienced
talking
it.
about the supplemental Common App
Right.
essay
Or,
on COVID.
and even just talking about, yeah, so through their
Yeah,
supplemental,
okay,
any
yeah,
obstacle they
right. Don't do it in
had,
the
and
personal statement essay.
right,
That's
just leave it,
totally yeah, totally out.
completely leave it out.
There is when COVID happened, Common App did add supplements,
Mhm.
a supplement for COVID specifically. And I always say if there's a supplement, if it's optional, you write it.
Which is what we said in our last podcast.
Yes,
If
you
it's
always write a
optional is not
supplement.
optional, like,
Optional is not
because
optional.
they want more information from you or
Exactly.
they
It's
wouldn't
just an
ask.
it's
Right,
opportunity for you to tell them more about you.
right,
So tell them something different. Don't regurgitate the same information,
right.
right? But for COVID, that's a really interesting question because when it first happened, I had all my students address it, but we didn't talk about the same thing everybody else would talk about. I had them talk about how they personally dealt with it.
Mhm.
Because everybody was shut down, you don't say, "I was shut down." You
Right,
say, "During the shutdown, I did this to help myself. I did this to help my family. I did this to help my community," that kind of
right.
thing. And if they had a first line work or that kind of thing, well, then of course that was addressed. Or if they had to help more with siblings or the parents worked or whatever,
Right.
that was a big deal. Now that they only have their freshman year for this group, I have for the first time since COVID had some students not address it because
Okay.
they really had no impact on them at all.
Right.
I do have some still doing it because they did struggle more with their grades with the online learning, so it's reflected in their transcript, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so then
I
you
see.
might want to address it.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the supplemental
Okay.
essays and the Common App and that kind of thing. I know you don't focus on it completely. However,
Mhm.
as we mentioned, they do have to turn something in when they do this. There does have to be a topic. And this is where we recommend that they research the school a little
Mhm.
more and be
Mhm.
a little more specific. And we don't want to reuse anything from the personal statement. We want
Exactly.
it to be completely separate.
Right, right, and we always do the supplements. Yeah.
Yeah, and we want it to be, and this is one of the advice that was given to us when our kids were in college with our daughter, of
Mhm.
course, 7 years ago, but I think it still pertains. You don't want to address like, "I've always been," my kids are Baylor, "I've always been a Bears
Oh,
fan.
yeah,
I
no, you
always
don't do
wanna
that.
be I've
Kids
always wanted to
applying to
be."
UT, "I've worn the burnt orange since I was
Yes,
3 years old." Yeah, don't
yes.
do that.
So,
Everybody, that's very
everybody going
generic.
there,
It's
yeah.
very generic.
So I just wanted to put that out there that
Yes,
that's
thank you
something we
for
never
saying that.
never want.
Yes.
And that was
Yes.
one of the very first
Yeah.
advice that we
Yeah.
got with applying for colleges, like when she's
Yes.
writing her stuff, because Baylor does go in and ask their own, and they have their own
Mhm.
application and they ask their own questions.
Mhm.
And that is like, what are you going to contribute? Why do you want to
Mhm.
go
Mhm.
come here kind of
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they is like, do
Why this
not
school? That's
say
the why this school
why this
essay.
school.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think I wrote down that, I mean, they kind of break up into that, why this school, why this major,
Mhm.
your
Mhm.
favorite activity,
The
and the
general
diversity.
buckets, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that everything kind of fits
Yeah, so you
into.
can kind of, like,
So it'd
reach
probably
into
be
it.
a
Yeah.
good idea to focus on those 4 things right
Mhm.
before applications ever opened, although it's
Mhm.
kind of late now. But if you're a junior,
Yeah.
you can start
Yeah.
that process
Yeah.
and write essays just for those
Right.
topics, right?
Right.
Why
Right.
are you picking this school?
Right.
Why do you want to do this? What
Right.
this major?
Right. But then when you highlight when you do it for one particular school, you do need to go in and research. So for, like, why this major or why this school, you need to go in and research that school in particular and find something in that school that you can highlight in
Hmm.
your essay and say, I want to go to Baylor because they offer this particular internship, this particular professor,
Right.
this
Something very
particular
specific.
research
Hmm.
program that will help me toward my goal of,
Right.
or even if you don't know what your major is, will help you grow in whatever.
Which reflects your interest in the school and how you really
Exactly.
want to be
That
there. Yeah.
you've taken the time to research the school
Hmm.
and you know what you're getting into and you're conveying that through the essay. Now, that being said, if you don't know your major, keep in mind that when you apply, especially to UT and A&M, they are direct major admits.
Hmm.
And UT especially is very, very big on fit to major. So you really
That's good
kind of,
to know.
if you don't, even if you're not really sure what your major is, you're going to have to pick one to apply. And then you have to
Convey that.
convey
Yeah.
that this is what you want to do, even if you're not really, really certain.
So I didn't know that. So that's good
Yeah.
information to have. So
Yeah.
if you're going to have to know your major
Yeah.
or at least get something close to what your interests
Right.
are, which is
Right.
kind of where your personal statement
Right.
that you're trying to figure out,
Right. And at least
what
once you get
fits.
into the college, like at UT, if you can get into, like, say, if you want to do engineering, get into the
Hmm.
engineering college, and then you can decide which,
What of
what type
engineering.
of engineering you want to
Hmm.
do, or get into the business program, get into McCombs, and then you can decide if you want to do accounting or finance or.
So are there students that start the application and what I'm trying to prevent is somebody starting the application not having any clue where they want to go. And this is why we do lists beforehand
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
figure out, because once you get into that application, you have to specify where you're going to go.
Yeah.
And it starts popping up
Yeah.
the
Because you
additional
have,
information.
yes, yes, you have
that-
individual schools you have to apply to.
And these
Yeah.
essays, right? I
Yes.
imagine that if you're
Yes.
applying to a specific program, that program wants you to write
Yes.
something on
Yes.
them. So
Yes. Not always, but yes,
it
there'll be
does.
like these little hidden essays
Yes.
that, oh, I didn't know that was going to be there. It wasn't there before.
Right.
But once you put your major in, that major wants to know this about you.
So it's
Yeah.
really important that they're careful to hit every little tab,
Yep.
open every
Yep.
information box, because
That's
there's
right.
stuff hidden
That's right.
in
And then
there.
there'll be those little green checks that'll tell you when you've
Right.
completed it.
So there's essays and everything. Yeah.
Yes.
What is your feeling about reusing essays? So we're applying to several schools' business program, and we
Mhm,
have
mhm.
this.
Well, so you just touched on that with the why this major or the
Right.
why this school. You
So,
can take components of it
right.
and reuse the frame and some of why you want to be in a business major, and you can
Hmm.
use all that part. But then when you're going to talk about Baylor's business program versus UT's business program, you have cited hopefully specific things within Baylor that UT does not care about.
So
So you
reusing it, you have to be very careful and
exactly.
editing.
And reusing, why reinvent? I'm totally all about reusing.
Mhm.
Just be careful when you do it. Reuse about you and find new information about the school.
But
Yeah.
be careful that you're not
Yeah, make sure you change all
not
the
being
UTs to A&M or
yeah.
whatever, you know?
that you're fixing
Yeah,
everything.
right.
So, and I have to say, I hear a lot like you can use this personal statement for anything or for any, like applying for scholarships, you can reuse it.
Yeah.
And I know that is true a lot, but as the scholarship provider, I get essays. And on our essays, we ask for tell us what your future plans are, your academic goals, and if you've
Oh,
had
so
any
it's not the
issues.
same. Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
get essays, and I'm like, what are they talking about? This is nothing that we
You
asked for.
obviously reused an
You
essay that's not
obviously
applicable.
reused an
So you
essay.
do have to be careful, and you have to
Right,
one of the things that I make sure the students I work with focus on is you have to really read the prompt.
right,
And as you write your essay and you think you're done, go back and read the prompt.
right,
Did you answer all the points? You know,
right.
I think I don't know if it's UT or Baylor that says, tell us in detail. And they have the word detail in the prompt.
Mhm.
Were you detailed in your answer?
That's my experience
Yeah.
as reading it as a scholarship provider, saying it's a one-page personal statement, yes, but tell me about your background, tell me about your academic goals, and tell me
Hmm.
about your financial need if there's any. And
Yeah.
then I get something about a
Yeah.
movie that I don't understand. This doesn't say
Yeah,
anything
that was
about
probably
you.
a reused person statement.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's my initial thought. Like,
Yeah.
this is where that mentality comes. Like, I can reuse it for anything, but
Right. No, you really
no,
can't.
but if you're looking for for help,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to really be paying attention to what that is. And similar, like I said, if you're trying to get into a specific program, you got to make sure that you're talking about that
You have to
program.
research that program,
Right.
please, and really
Right.
tell details about it.
My final question, and then we can go into anything else that you might feel needs to be shared. But what are your thoughts on using Chat GPT these days?
Gosh, so I don't personally use Chat GPT. I would say for writing a personal statement essay, how personal can Chat GPT
B.
be?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they could certainly write a really good essay, but is it going to really reflect you and your values
You are.
and who you are? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how about for these supplement essays?
The same thing,
Your
they're not
prompt.
gonna know why do you wanna go to that school, why you wanna be that major. You're the one that knows why it's important to you and what
Mm-hmm.
you wanna be and what do you wanna accomplish, Chat GPT does not know these things.
These are very prompt specific and things that as higher education is trying to modify things. And
Mhm,
so I'm
mhm,
just,
mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
curious as to how
yeah,
much it's
yeah,
used really by students these days.
yeah,
And
yeah.
in college, our son is in a second year of college and you don't know what's going to happen,
Right,
like
right,
academic,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
let's not use it. But I use it to write letters or
I
quick
think that would be
things
a
that,
really good but I heard about a lawyer that submitted it for some sort of court filing, and it
oh,
cited
yeah, it
cases
was
that were
false
all completely wrong.
information.
So,
Yes.
you gotta be careful.
Yeah.
I would say don't do it.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Great.
yeah.
So is there anything else you
Well,
want to share?
I think we never quite got around to when we were talking about building your personal statement
Hmm.
essay and talk about telling your story and then highlighting your values. As you're just brainstorming, deciding your story that you want to tell
Hmm.
to convey your values, there's a whole nother vein that you need to pursue during that process where you're deciding what values you want to
Okay.
pursue.
Hmm.
So you need to already have narrowed down what's important to me to who I am. Think about, do I want to convey to this school that I am ambitious or that I'm compassionate or that I'm empathetic or that I'm hardworking or I value faith? I would
Hmm.
say pick three values that you feel like say who you are as a person and
Hmm.
then make sure that you are highlighting them and showing how they grew in you and then what they would look like on the campus. So
Right.
those are the two
What,
components when you talk about the essay, the story you're going to tell, and then what values are you going to highlight in the story.
which is also, I think, part of finding the right college for you,
Mm-hmm.
finding the right fit, because
Mm-hmm.
I remember with my son's personal statement, that was one of the things. Baylor's very big on a servant's heart and a
Mm-hmm.
community.
Yes. Yes.
And that is something that he did touch on, the importance of
Absolutely.
being part of your community and volunteering, because that is very important to Baylor. And that is one of the things that showed that it was a good fit for him. This
But a
really,
student that does not have those values as important probably would not be as happy at Baylor either.
right. If you're doing this process and you've realized these are the values that are important to me, and then you go look at the school and you're like, this is not really,
Yeah,
then
maybe
you,
that's
then
not
this
the
is
school
not
for
the
me.
school for you.
Right, exactly.
So that's
Exactly.
very important
Yeah,
to
yeah,
when you start
yeah,
finalizing these things.
yeah,
And
yeah.
also, like you mentioned, we talked about like I've been wearing burnt orange my whole life, and then UT doesn't offer the program that you're even
Oh,
interested
UT
in.
offers everything.
But I
What
mean,
don't they offer?
right. But there's some schools that don't
Yeah,
offer
yeah, yeah,
anything.
that's true. That's
So
true,
we
that's
have
true.
a story of a friend of ours. Obviously, he's an adult now, but he went to play football for Rice and got his great scholarship. And when he arrived, he told them that he wanted to be a teacher. And they're like, oh, no, we don't
Oh
offer
gosh.
that program here.
Well, that's why you have
So
to
he
kind of
had to
make your list.
transfer, but he was so excited to play football there that it never occurred to him to even check. So he
Yeah.
had to transfer after the first year because
Well, that's
they
when
didn't
you're
offer
building your list.
that.
Look at what majors they offer. That's
Right.
kind of a part of building your list.
Before you
Yes,
apply,
before you before you write that Rice essay and do the interview.
and before
With-
you spend
yeah.
anybody's time,
Yes,
your own
yes.
and somebody
Make
else's.
sure they have your major.
Right.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
I would think that goes without saying, but I guess you
But
never
no,
know.
you never know. They're so excited to
Yeah.
play a sport or do
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
you forget about all the rest, or the coaches recruiting you that you don't process like
Yeah.
what's going to happen
Yeah,
after.
true.
That always stays in my mind. When he told me that story, I think I've referred to it millions of times
Oh gosh.
in conversation because that's all I can
Because
think
it's
of.
Rice, what a great
Why
school.
wouldn't you want to go
Yeah,
there?
yeah,
But
yeah.
they don't offer that kind of program. So,
And I would also say there's so many good resources online for writing your personal statement essay, not just the brainstorming, but also trying to figure out your values and formatting and just step by step. So there's lots of good for fee and not for fee resources out there. So just kind of do some Google searching and don't feel like you're completely out there on your own.
right. And if you're a sophomore and you need help, you can go to Cisneros
CisneroSCollegeConsulting.com.
because there are individuals out there who just want to focus on helping you and your family and your students get where they're trying to get. And part of this podcast is for the parents who can't do that. But parents, this is for the students. You need to encourage your students to do the work.
Yeah,
and that is your role in supporting them through this process.
Right. And you can monitor and make sure that they're kind of
It's
staying on
getting
track
done.
and it's getting done, but the work needs to come from them. The
For sure.
school can tell if it's not, without a doubt.
Yes, the school can tell if the parents wrote the essay.
The school can tell if the parents wrote the essay. Can I say that again?
Yes, one more time for the people in the back. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think this was wonderful. And as we mentioned before we came on air, I focus more on the financial aid side of things. So I think it's really great to have that. And for parents to hear it's not about them and it's about the kids and they need to do this.
Yeah.
They need to get the resume together and they need to help build the list because it's their future. It's their life that happens after this.
Invested.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.